3 weeks after a county employee first questioned his right to use Cole Farm Road, Ethan Cole came home from the south pasture and found a white envelope waiting beneath the kitchen light. He knew it was trouble before he opened it. The county seal sat in the upper left corner. Through the envelope window, 2 red words were visible. Notice of violation. His boots were wet from the pasture. Mud had dried along the cuffs of his jeans. His shoulders ached from replacing fence posts all morning, and for a few seconds, Ethan simply stood there staring at the envelope. Then he opened it. Unauthorized use, restricted access, non-compliance with county transportation regulations. The language was cold and official, the kind that seemed designed to make an ordinary person feel small before he even understood what he had supposedly done. Ethan read the page once, then again. His eyes stopped at the bottom. Civil penalty, $950. He slowly pulled out the chair his father had built 30 years earlier and sat down. The violation concerned a road requiring county authorization for continued vehicle access. Ethan assumed they had the wrong parcel. Then he saw the name, Cole Farm Road. He looked through the kitchen window. Beyond the barn, the narrow gravel lane disappeared between the cottonwoods. His road. The road Walter Cole had carved through the farm with an old tractor when Ethan was still a boy. The road Ethan had graded every spring. The road he had rebuilt after floods, covered with gravel from his own pocket, cleared after storms and kept passable through winters. The county had never graded it, never bought gravel for it, never cleared its ditches, yet county trucks crossed it regularly. Inspectors, contractors, utility crews, and now those same offices were demanding $950 because Ethan had driven his own truck across it. For several seconds, anger rose hot enough that he reached for the phone. Then his hand stopped. He could almost hear Walter's voice. When somebody tells you something belongs to them, don't argue first. Find the paper. Ethan folded the citation carefully. That night, instead of calling anyone, he opened the old metal filing cabinet in the mudroom. Deeds, surveys, tax records, maps. He searched until after midnight. By sunrise, he still did not know exactly what right the county believed it had. But one thing had changed. He no longer intended to accept their assumption simply because it appeared on official letterhead. On his way to the barn, Ethan stopped beside the workbench. A heavy steel chain hung from a nail. Beside it sat a new padlock. At the northern end of Cole Farm Road was a gate that had remained open for years. Ethan looked at the lock. He didn't pick it up. Not yet. Because before he closed that gate, he wanted to know exactly how a road his father had built had somehow become a road Ethan needed permission to use. And to understand that, he had to go back to where the road began. 3 weeks earlier, Cole Farm Road was still open. It had been open for so long that Ethan rarely thought about the gate at all. Long before the county placed the road on a digital map, it had been 2 muddy tire tracks across Walter Cole's farm. Ethan was 9 when his father began shaping it. Walter had no engineering degree, no survey crew, no expensive machinery. He had an old tractor, a rear blade with 2 ugly welds, and something Ethan wouldn't appreciate until decades later: patience. After heavy rain, Walter never started the tractor immediately. He walked. Sometimes Ethan followed, annoyed that his father seemed more interested in standing in wet grass than getting to work. Walter watched where water pooled, where mud stayed soft, where wagon tires sank, where runoff crossed the pasture. One afternoon, Walter pointed toward a strip of higher ground. See that? Ethan saw grass. Nothing more. Walter smiled. Someday, he told him, Ethan would learn that a road wasn't just about where you wanted to go. It was about where the land would let you go. That was why Cole Farm Road curved. On a map, the route looked inefficient. It avoided a low field, climbed gently toward higher ground, and crossed a drainage channel where Walter later installed a culvert. But Walter wasn't trying to draw a straight line. He was trying to build something that would still be there after the next storm. Years passed. Whenever money allowed, another truckload of stone arrived. Whenever rain damaged the road, father and son repaired it. Ethan remembered summer evenings when Walter would be exhausted, but still climb onto the tractor because water had cut a channel into the shoulder. Back then, Ethan sometimes resented it. There was always another ditch, another rut, another load of gravel. Only after Walter was gone did Ethan understand those evenings differently. His father hadn't merely maintained a road. He had been teaching Ethan how to keep a farm alive. By the time Ethan inherited the property, Cole Farm Road stretched nearly a mile. It wasn't beautiful. Summer traffic covered it in dust. Winter softened the shoulders. Grass grew along its center, but it connected the farm. Cattle trailers reached the back pasture. Tractors reached the northern fields. Feed trucks stayed out of the low ground. Then, the valley changed. Land beyond the coal property was divided. Utility infrastructure expanded. County crews increasingly needed to reach facilities beyond Ethan's northern boundary. There was another route, but Cole Farm Road was easier, so Ethan let them through. At first, people waved. Sometimes they stopped. Sometimes they asked. Walter had always believed neighbors helped one another. Ethan tried to live the same way, so the gate remained open. And slowly, something changed. People stopped asking. Then they stopped waving. Eventually, the road became so convenient that everyone using it seemed to forget there was a man behind the gravel, the ditch, and the open gate. Everyone except Ethan, and the father who had taught him never to confuse generosity with ownership. Ethan couldn't say exactly when courtesy became expectation. There was no single day when it happened. No meeting. No agreement. No moment when someone announced that Cole Farm Road would now be treated as though it belonged to everyone. It happened one vehicle at a time. A county pickup every few weeks became several each week. Then utility trucks appeared. Then contractors hauling equipment. Some passed before sunrise. Others came through while Ethan was feeding cattle. Nobody stopped at the farmhouse anymore. Nobody called. The gate was open, so they drove through. For a long time, Ethan told himself it didn't matter. Then came 3 days of rain. The fields softened, drainage channels filled. Water moved exactly where Walter Cole had always said it would. Cole Farm Road held, but the traffic punished it. Heavy tires pushed gravel toward the shoulders. A contractor's trailer cut across a soft edge and left 2 deep trenches. Near the northern gate, water collected inside fresh ruts. Saturday morning, Ethan climbed onto his tractor. He worked for hours. He pulled gravel back toward the crown, cleared branches from the ditch, opened the culvert, filled the damaged shoulder. His clothes were soaked by the time he finished. For a moment he stood beside the road, tired but satisfied. It looked right again. Monday morning, a county truck rolled across the repaired section. The driver raised 2 fingers in greeting. Ethan watched him pass. He didn't raise his hand. That surprised him. Not because he hated the driver. He didn't. What bothered Ethan was the realization that nobody inside that truck knew what had happened there 48 hours earlier. They saw a road. They didn't see Saturday. They didn't see diesel, gravel, mud, a man climbing off a tractor with pain in his back because someone else's tires had damaged what he would be expected to repair. A month later, Ethan ordered another load of gravel. Then another. This time, he kept every receipt, not because he planned to sue anyone, not because he wanted revenge. He simply wanted to know. How much did generosity actually cost? He found an old notebook inside the tractor. He began recording vehicles. Date, time, type. County pickup, utility truck, contractor. The pages filled faster than he expected. With every entry, Ethan felt something uncomfortable, replacing the easygoing trust his father had taught him. Not anger. Not yet. It was the feeling of being taken for granted. One afternoon, he stood beside the gate studying fresh tracks in the gravel. Walter had once told him something Ethan hadn't understood as a boy. The most valuable acre on a farm might be the one everybody drives over. Now he understood at least part of it. People rarely noticed a road while it was available. They noticed when it wasn't. Still, Ethan left the gate open. Until one Tuesday morning, he was pulling a trailer toward his own north pasture when amber lights appeared in the mirror. A county vehicle was signaling him to stop. On the same road Ethan had spent Saturday repairing. And for the first time, the county wasn't simply using Cole Farm Road. It was about to tell Ethan whether he was allowed to use it. Ethan eased the trailer onto the shoulder and shut off the engine. The county pickup stopped behind him with amber lights flashing. A man wearing a reflective vest stepped out with a clipboard. Ethan recognized the truck immediately. He had recorded it in his notebook 6 times that month. "Morning," Ethan said. The employee looked at the trailer. "Fence posts. Wire. Lumber. You hauling material through here?" "To my north pasture." The man wrote something down. Then came the question. "Do you have authorization to use this access?" For a second, Ethan genuinely thought he had misunderstood. Authorization from who? The county. Ethan looked past him toward the road, then toward the pasture on one side, then the pasture on the other. A strange heat began rising behind his ribs. Not rage, something closer to disbelief. "That field is mine," he pointed across the road. "So is that one." The employee remained professional. "I'm only telling you what our records show." Ethan stepped slowly out of the truck. He looked down. Fresh pale gravel showed through the damp surface. "You drove through here Tuesday." The man didn't respond. "County crews came through Friday too." Nothing. Ethan pointed at the stone beneath their boots. 14 tons last month. Then the ditch. I cleared that. Then the repaired shoulder. Your contractor damaged that. The employee lowered his clipboard. "Mr. Cole, I'm not here to argue about maintenance." That sentence landed harder than Ethan expected. Because maintenance was the entire reason the road existed. Rain didn't care whose name appeared on a map. Water loosened gravel. Heavy tires pushed stone outward. Blocked ditches turned runoff into channels. Without work, the road failed. Walter had taught Ethan the rules when he was still a boy. Keep the crown high. Keep the ditch open. Give water somewhere else to go. Ethan had followed those rules for decades. The county benefited from every hour. And now, one of its employees stood on Ethan's gravel, beside Ethan's ditch, telling Ethan that maintenance wasn't relevant while questioning whether Ethan had permission to be there. The absurdity of it almost made him laugh. Instead, Ethan stayed quiet. The man handed him a yellow notice. "This is only a warning. Contact transportation if you believe there's an issue." Ethan took it. Then asked, "When your trucks come through tomorrow, should I check their authorization too?" The employee looked at him. For one brief moment, the confidence disappeared from his face. He offered no answer. He returned to the pickup and drove north. Across Cole Farm Road, Ethan remained beside the trailer until the truck disappeared. That evening, he opened his notebook. He added a new heading beneath the vehicle log. Cost of access, gravel, diesel, culvert pipe, equipment hours, drainage work. As the numbers grew, Ethan's anger cooled into something far more useful. Evidence. 2 weeks later, a county envelope arrived. This time it wasn't a warning. It was the $950 mistake that would eventually close the gate. The envelope arrived on a Thursday afternoon. Ethan carried it inside without opening it. He already knew what it was about. For 2 weeks, he had called the number printed on the yellow warning. Every conversation ended almost exactly the same way. Transportation transferred him to Land Records. Land Records sent him back to Transportation. One employee suggested permits. Another suggested property records. Someone finally told him to submit a written request and wait 30 days. Ethan had asked only one question. Who owns Cole Farm Road? Nobody had given him one clear answer. Now, another county envelope sat on the kitchen table. Ethan opened it. This notice was different. There was no warning language, no suggestion that the matter might be a misunderstanding. At the top was a formal violation number. Near the bottom were the words Ethan would still be thinking about weeks later. Civil penalty, $950. He read the amount twice, then leaned back. County trucks had crossed Cole Farm Road 3 times that week, and now the county was demanding almost $1,000 because Ethan had used it himself. The next morning, he drove to the county office. He brought everything he could think of: his deed, tax records, parcel maps, gravel receipts, photographs, the yellow warning. The woman behind the counter spent more time studying her computer than any of Ethan's documents. Finally, she turned the monitor toward him. A thin digital line crossed his parcel. "There," she said. "That's the access corridor." Ethan stared at it. "I can see the road. Then you understand the issue?" "No." He placed his deed on the counter. "I understand there's a line on your map. I don't understand where that line says I need permission to cross my own farm." The woman called another employee, then another. Eventually, Ethan sat across from a transportation supervisor. According to our records, Ethan let him finish. Then he asked the question that mattered. "Can you show me the document that gives the county control over that road?" The supervisor tapped the map. "It's designated in the system." "That's a map." "Yes. I'm asking for the document." Silence. "An easement, a dedication, an agreement. Something my father signed, something a previous owner signed. Show me where someone gave the county the authority you're claiming." The supervisor's expression hardened. "You can challenge the citation through the proper process." That wasn't an answer. Ethan knew it. He gathered his papers. At the door, he stopped. "One more question." The supervisor looked up. "Your crews use that road, don't they? From time to time. Do they have permission?" Nobody answered. Ethan drove home slowly. He wasn't thinking about the $950 anymore. He was thinking about that thin line on the screen. His father had taught him that maps were useful, but a map showed where something was. It did not always explain who had the right to use it. That evening, Ethan opened Walter's filing cabinet again. This time, he dug beneath years of tax records and equipment paperwork. Near the bottom, he found a yellowed survey inside an envelope. Across the front, in his father's handwriting, were 4 words. "North Road, keep this." Ethan unfolded his father's survey beneath the kitchen light. The paper had gone soft along the creases. Its edges were yellow. Some markings had faded, but the road remained visible. Beside it, in Walter's handwriting, were 2 simple words: farm access. Ethan ran one finger across the pencil marks. For a moment, the county disappeared. So did the citation. He remembered his father standing beside that same road, boots muddy, explaining why water mattered more than straight lines. Walter had been gone for years. Yet here he was again. Not in a photograph. In pencil. Ethan searched deeper into the filing cabinet. An older deed. A property description. A receipt for the first culvert. None of those documents automatically proved that the county had no access rights. Ethan understood that. There could be records he hadn't seen. There could be an easement recorded elsewhere. The point wasn't that Ethan had suddenly proved everything. The point was that the county still hadn't proved what it was claiming. The following morning, Ethan returned to the county office. He placed 3 things on the supervisor's desk: the $950 citation, his father's survey, the deed. "I don't need another explanation of the computer map," Ethan said. "I need the document behind it." The supervisor began repeating the access corridor designation. Ethan stopped him. "I'm not asking what your software calls the road." His voice remained controlled. "My father built it. My family maintained it. I pay taxes on the ground beneath it. Your trucks use it. And now you've issued a written penalty saying I need authorization to drive there." He tapped the citation. "So I'm asking the question your own notice created." The supervisor looked down. "What authorizes your crews?" Silence. That silence told Ethan more than the previous weeks of phone calls. Not that the county was necessarily wrong, but that the certainty behind the $950 fine was far weaker than the letter had made it sound. "You can appeal the penalty," the supervisor finally said. "I will." Ethan picked up the survey, then the deed, but he left the citation on the desk for 1 additional second. "When you find the document authorizing county access, send me a copy." The supervisor hesitated. "I'll have to review it." "Please do." Outside, Ethan sat in his pickup without starting the engine. He expected to feel angry. Instead, he felt something colder, clearer. The fine no longer frightened him. It had become useful. For years, access had existed inside an informal fog. Everyone drove through. Nobody asked. Ethan repaired the road. Nobody defined anything. The county had changed that when it put its position into writing. If authorization mattered for Ethan, authorization mattered for everyone. That afternoon, he walked north until he reached Walter's old steel gate. Fresh county tire tracks ran through the damp gravel. Ethan placed one hand on the rusted rail. For years, he had kept it open because he trusted people not to confuse kindness with entitlement. Now that trust had been damaged. He returned to the barn. Above the workbench was the new padlock. Ethan lifted it. Its weight surprised him. The county wanted access treated formally. For the first time, Ethan realized he might agree with them. Ethan still didn't lock the gate. That mattered. He wasn't trying to create a confrontation he couldn't defend. He wanted to know everything he could before taking an action that would affect people beyond his farm. So he kept searching. At the bottom of Walter's filing cabinet was an old cardboard tube. Ethan had nearly thrown it away twice. Inside was a map older than the county facilities beyond his northern boundary, older than several neighboring subdivisions, older than many of the parcel lines now glowing cleanly on the county's computer screens. And there was the road, already there. Ethan spread the old map beside the modern parcel printout. For several minutes he simply stared. The modern map made Cole Farm Road look like part of an established system. The old map told a more human story. It began as a farm road, built to reach cattle, fields, higher ground. The infrastructure beyond Ethan's property had come later. So had the county traffic. That didn't settle the legal question, but it settled something inside Ethan. His father hadn't built a county road that Ethan later inherited. He had built a farm road that other people later learned to depend on. Ethan began organizing everything in chronological order. Old map, survey, deed, tax records, culvert receipt, gravel receipts, maintenance photographs, yellow warning, $950 citation, vehicle log. When he finished, the folder had become thick enough that the elastic band barely held it closed. Near sunset, Ethan walked outside. Fresh tire tracks crossed the road. 3 vehicles. One had been heavy enough to push gravel toward the ditch. He followed the tracks north. The old steel gate stood open. Beyond it lay the route county crews had used for years. Ethan leaned against the post. He remembered being a boy sitting on Walter's tractor fender. Back then, every decision his father made seemed permanent. Walter knew where the road belonged. Walter knew where the ditch belonged. Walter knew what to do. Now Ethan understood something adulthood had taught him cruelly. Walter hadn't known everything. He had simply been willing to pay attention. Ethan looked down at the gate. That was what he needed to do now. Pay attention. Ask the question. Refuse to pretend certainty existed where nobody could produce it. He pulled the padlock from his coat pocket. Then the chain. He measured both against the gate. They fit. But Ethan left the gate open. One more night. One final chance. The next morning, he would call the county and ask for the underlying access document one last time. If they produced it, he would read it. If they explained their rights, he would listen. But if the answer was another reference to a digital line and nothing more, Ethan would stop allowing strangers to treat his open gate as permanent permission. He slipped the lock back into his pocket. Behind him, the sun fell across the gravel Walter had taught him to maintain. Tomorrow, Ethan would find out whether the county actually had authorization, or whether everyone had simply become accustomed to never being asked. At 8:03 the next morning, Ethan called the county transportation office one final time. He wrote the time in his notebook. A woman transferred him to land records. Land records transferred him back to transportation. Eventually, Ethan reached a man who said the request had been reviewed. "Did you find the document?" Ethan asked. "We confirmed the road is shown as an access corridor in our system." Ethan closed his eyes. "That isn't what I asked." Silence. "I need the easement, agreement, dedication, or whatever document gives the county the access rights you're claiming. We don't have anything else available for you at this time." Ethan looked through the kitchen window. Cole Farm Road disappeared toward the northern pasture. "Then until somebody can explain this properly, I don't want county vehicles crossing my property without permission." The man's voice changed. "Mr. Cole, I wouldn't recommend interfering with county operations." Ethan looked at the $950 citation beside his notebook. "I'm not interfering with anything." He paused. "I'm taking authorization as seriously as you told me to." Then he hung up. At 8:41, Ethan drove north. The old gate stood open. He climbed out and inspected the hinges. Rusty, but solid. He pushed. The gate groaned across the gravel. For the first time in years, it closed completely. Ethan threaded the steel chain around the post, then attached the padlock. Click. The sound was almost disappointingly small. No shouting, no dramatic speech, no crowd. Just steel closing around steel. Ethan attached a sign. Private property, no access without permission. Then he drove back toward the barn. At 9:17, an engine approached. A white county pickup rolled north. It stopped. The driver waited, then climbed out. From beside the barn, Ethan watched him inspect the chain and read the sign. The man reached for his phone. 7 minutes later, another county vehicle arrived. Then a third. 3 employees stood outside the locked gate. Ethan's phone rang. "Did you lock this?" "Yes." "We need to get through." Ethan looked toward the citation on his workbench. "Do you have authorization?" Silence. The exact same silence Ethan had felt when the question was directed at him. "This is a county access route." "Then send me the document showing your access rights. We have scheduled work beyond the gate." "I understand." "Then open it." Ethan's voice stayed calm. "You fined me $950 while telling me access requires authorization. I've spent weeks asking who actually has that authorization." The man said nothing. "So until somebody answers that question, nobody gets to use my permission by assumption." The call ended. For 20 minutes, the trucks remained at the gate. Then one by one they turned around. Ethan watched them disappear. He expected satisfaction. Instead, he felt a knot in his stomach. Because closing the gate had been easy, what came next was uncertain. And farther up the valley, a maintenance crew was waiting for equipment that had just been forced to turn around. Before the day was over, the county was going to learn exactly how much one open farm gate had been worth. By noon, the county had found another route, at least on the map. The maintenance crew returned to the highway, drove east around the ridge, and approached the upper valley from the opposite direction. On a computer screen, the difference looked minor. On the ground, it was anything but. 3 days of rain had softened the lower portions of the alternate road. The route narrowed between 2 fields, crossed a low drainage area, and climbed toward the county water control station. A pickup might make it. The loaded equipment trailer was another matter. Ethan knew that route. Walter had tried using it decades earlier. That was one of the reasons Cole Farm Road existed. His father hadn't built the northern road where he did because it was convenient. He built it where the land allowed a reliable road to survive. At 1:26, Ethan's phone rang. County Transportation. He let it ring twice. "Mr. Cole, we need temporary access through your north gate." Ethan looked toward the pasture. "Why?" "We have scheduled maintenance at the water control site." "What happened to the other route?" There was a pause. "Conditions aren't suitable for the equipment." Ethan said nothing. For years, he had assumed county crews preferred Cole Farm Road because it saved time. Now he understood something much more important. It wasn't merely shorter. Under the wrong conditions, it was the route they could actually depend on. "We only need the gate opened for today," the man said. Ethan looked at the folder on his kitchen table. Warning, citation, survey, maintenance receipts. "Have you found the access document?" "That's still being reviewed." "Then my answer is still the same. Mr. Cole, this maintenance is important. I believe you. We need our equipment through. And I needed my trailer through when your employee stopped me on my own road. This isn't helping." Ethan's jaw tightened. For the first time, emotion slipped slightly into his voice. "No. What's not helping is pretending the question doesn't matter until the gate is locked." The line went quiet. Then came a question Ethan hadn't expected. What would it take to open it? He leaned back. Not because he wanted money, not because he wanted revenge, because those words meant something. For the first time, the county was acknowledging that access might require something from him. Put it in writing. "What?" "Why you need my road. What authority you believe gives you access. Who pays for damage. And why I'm being fined for using the same road you're asking me to open." Silence. Then the man said someone would call him back. Ethan hung up. Outside, water flowed cleanly through the ditch and disappeared beneath Walter's old culvert. Cole Farm Road remained firm. The county's alternate route did not. For the first time since the warning arrived, Ethan understood the leverage sitting behind the locked gate. The county had believed it was arguing over a line on a map. But now the land itself had entered the argument, and the land was explaining why Walter Cole had built the road exactly where he did. The county called the next morning. This time, the voice belonged to someone Ethan hadn't spoken with before, Daniel Mercer, county engineer. His first question was unexpected. Who designed Cole Farm Road? Ethan looked toward the window. My father. Was he an engineer? Ethan almost laughed. No. What did he do? Farmed. There was silence on the line. Then Mercer explained that he had inspected the alternate route after the maintenance crew failed to bring its equipment through. The problem wasn't simply mud. The lower ground held water. The final climb became difficult under load. Coal Farm Road behaved differently. Ethan felt something tighten in his throat. My father could have told you that. That afternoon, Mercer came to the farm. Ethan met him at the gate. Instead of discussing the citation, Ethan walked him along the road. The shallow crown, the open ditch, the culvert, the northern bend. Mercer stopped. Why does it curve here? Ethan looked across the low pasture. For an instant, he saw Walter there, older, sunburned, one hand resting on the tractor. My father learned not to go straight. They walked toward the field. The soil softened beneath their boots. Water still sat in shallow depressions days after the storm. Ethan crouched. He used to tell me water remembers where it wants to go. Mercer looked toward the higher road. Ethan smiled faintly. I thought it was one of those things fathers say when you're 9 and they're trying to make work sound important. He rubbed damp soil between his fingers. Took me years to realize he was teaching me. Walter had watched, where water accumulated, where equipment sank, where runoff accelerated. Then he had shaped the road around those patterns. He didn't defeat the land. He listened to it. The two men returned toward the gate. Mercer looked over the road again. So that's why our crews prefer it. Ethan shook his head. That isn't why. He pointed toward the saturated low ground. They depend on it. Mercer didn't argue. That small silence felt different from the ones Ethan had heard inside county offices. It wasn't avoidance. It was recognition. Before leaving, Mercer stopped beside his truck. I can't tell you what the legal access situation is. That's fine. For the first time since the warning, Ethan heard a county employee admit uncertainty without hiding behind a computer screen. Mercer continued. But operationally, this road matters more than our records suggested. Ethan looked down its length. Same gravel, same ditches, same bend. Walter had refused to straighten. The county had sophisticated maps, engineering departments, databases. Yet the thing their system had failed to record was the thing Walter had understood with muddy boots. A road wasn't valuable because a line said it existed. It was valuable because, when everything else failed, it still worked. The argument had begun over $950. Now Ethan knew the number had never been the real issue. The locked gate had simply forced everyone to finally measure the value of what had been sitting open all along. 3 days after Mercer's visit, the county called again. Nobody ordered Ethan to unlock the gate. Instead, they asked him to come to a meeting. That difference wasn't lost on him. Ethan arrived carrying the same folder that county employees had barely looked at weeks earlier. Survey, deed, old map, maintenance records, photographs, vehicle log, and the $950 citation. This time, everyone looked at the documents. Daniel Mercer sat beside the transportation supervisor. Across the table was a representative from the county property office. A large parcel map lay between them. The property officer spoke first. We've reviewed the older records. Ethan waited. The county's system clearly identified the road as an access corridor, she explained. But the historical paperwork was not nearly as simple as the digital map made it appear. There were old references, parcel records, later documents apparently assuming continued access. But the single, clean document Ethan had repeatedly requested had not been located. Nobody declared Ethan right. Nobody declared the county wrong, but something important had disappeared from the room. Certainty. The transportation supervisor looked at the citation. We'd like to resolve the penalty while the access issue is reviewed. Ethan folded his hands. What does resolve mean? We're prepared to withdraw the $950 citation. Ethan had imagined hearing those words for weeks. He expected satisfaction. Instead, he thought of his father. The gravel receipts, Saturday repairs, trucks passing the farmhouse without slowing. The unlocked gate everyone had stopped noticing. 3 weeks earlier, getting rid of $950 would have felt like winning. Now, it seemed too small. Ethan pushed the citation forward. Fine. Then he placed the maintenance notebook beside it. But what happens next year? Nobody answered. Ethan opened the notebook. Gravel. He turned a page. Diesel. Another. Grading. Drainage. Culvert work. He looked around the table. You use the road because it works. Mercer nodded. It works because somebody keeps it working. The property officer asked what Ethan wanted. 3 things. First, written confirmation that the citation was withdrawn. Second, actual documentation clarifying whatever access rights existed. Third, if county vehicles and contractors continued using the road, a formal understanding covering maintenance and damage. The supervisor leaned back. That may require an agreement. Ethan nodded. Exactly. For years, everyone had survived on ambiguity. The gate stayed open. Trucks drove through. Ethan repaired the damage. Nobody asked questions. Then the county fined the one man holding the arrangement together. The $950 citation had accidentally forced every hidden assumption into daylight. Weeks later, Ethan received the withdrawal letter. He read it twice, not because he couldn't believe he had won, because he finally understood that winning wasn't what he wanted. That afternoon, Mercer waited beside the northern gate. We need access to the station. This time, he asked. Ethan looked at him, then unlocked the padlock. The gate swung open. A county truck rolled through. The driver lifted 2 fingers from the steering wheel. Ethan returned the gesture. For one strange second, it reminded him of years ago, before resentment, before notices, before $950. The road hadn't changed, but the relationship had. The gate was open again. Only now everyone understood that someone had chosen to open it. A week later, rain returned. Not a violent storm, just steady rain, the kind Walter Cole had always respected most. Ethan stood beside the road wearing his father's old canvas jacket. Water traveled through the ditch in a narrow brown ribbon. At the crossing, it disappeared beneath the road through Walter's culvert. On the other side, it emerged exactly where it was supposed to. The gravel remained firm. Ethan watched silently. He had stood in that place hundreds of times, but that afternoon, the road felt different. For most of his life, Ethan believed the farm was what Walter had left him. The acreage, barn, fences, road, equipment. Now he understood those were only the visible parts. Walter's real inheritance was harder to put on a deed. Attention, patience, memory. As a boy, Ethan had complained when his father refused to straighten the northern bend. He had complained about cleaning ditches before storms. He had complained when Walter stopped work simply to watch water move across a field. Walter usually answered with the same strange sentence. Water remembers where it wants to go. Ethan had thought it was farmer talk. Now, standing beneath the rain in his father's jacket, he finally understood. Walter hadn't controlled the land. He had learned to notice it, where water wanted to move, where tires would sink, where soil stayed firm, where a road could survive. Decades later, the county possessed things Walter never had. Satellite imagery, digital parcel maps, computer databases, engineers. Yet a screen had reduced everything Walter understood to a thin line. On the ground, Cole Farm Road was never just a line. It was labor, drainage, judgment, history, trust, and responsibility. A county truck appeared in the distance. It slowed near the gate, then stopped. The driver climbed out. We need to inspect the station. No demand, no assumption. Ethan nodded. Road's wet. Stay near the crown through the north bend. Understood. Ethan opened the gate. The truck passed, leaving shallow tracks behind. Nothing more. Ethan left the gate open. That mattered to him. He had never wanted to shut people out. He had only wanted them to understand that an open gate did not mean a road had no owner, no cost, and no history. Later, Ethan returned to the farmhouse. He opened Walter's old metal filing cabinet. Inside was the county letter withdrawing the $950 penalty. For a moment, Ethan considered keeping it somewhere visible. Then he smiled. He placed it beside his father's survey. He found a fresh envelope. With a pencil, he wrote, Cole Farm Road. Keep this. His hand stopped. The handwriting looked strangely familiar, not identical to Walter's, just close enough. Ethan sat there for several seconds with one hand resting on the cabinet. Walter had once told him that the most valuable acre on a farm might be the one everybody drove over. Ethan had spent years believing his father meant money. Now he knew better. Value often disappeared from sight precisely because people depended on something every day. The county had seen a road. Walter had seen the land beneath it. Ethan had learned to see both. He closed the drawer. Outside, rain continued falling. And almost a mile away, water passed cleanly beneath the road his father had built. Exactly where Walter knew it would.